America has built a lot of guns, but only a few earned a reputation for pure, unmatched danger. These handguns weren't just tools, they were game changers, forged in war, crime, and history itself. Some became legends, others were banned, feared, or forgotten. But every one of them has one thing in common: they were dangerous enough to change everything. Today, we count down the 20 most dangerous American handguns ever made. Each one has a story, and by the end, you'll see why some of them should have never been built at all. Let's begin with the roots of danger, the pistols that built the myth. At number 20, we start not with war, but with ambition. The Colt Patterson Revolver 1836, the first practical repeating handgun. Before this, a man could fire once, maybe twice, then pray for luck, but Samuel Colt had other plans. He wanted a gun that could fire again and again without reloading, a radical idea that changed America forever. The Colt Patterson was beautiful, mechanical art, and completely terrifying to anyone who faced it. It didn't just give you power, it gave you time. 5 shots before your enemy could even reload one. That's not just an advantage, that's dominance. It put control into the hands of pioneers, soldiers, and sometimes the wrong kind of men. From the Texas Rangers to frontier outlaws, the Colt Patterson turned every encounter into a question of who drew first and who didn't he get up. At number 19, the Remington Model 1858 Army Revolver. Solid frame, rugged as a hammer, built like it could survive a war, because it did. During the Civil War, this revolver became a soldier's best friend and sometimes his only lifeline. Union troops loved it because it didn't jam, didn't break, and didn't care about mud or rain. And that made it one of the most dangerous weapons of its time, not because it was fancy, but because it worked. The Remington 1858 was a weapon of grit, cold steel in a cold world. And when soldiers talked about it, they didn't say if it saves my life. They said when it does. Number 18 brings us into the modern age, and a weapon that many Americans still swear by, the Smith & Wesson Model 29. Yes, the Dirty Harry gun, the .4 for Magnum. When Clint Eastwood raised that revolver on screen and said, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" he wasn't just talking to the bad guy, he was talking to everyone watching. The Model 29 became the face of unstoppable power, the revolver that could take down anything that moved. Hunters loved it, lawmen respected it, criminals feared it, but the real danger wasn't the gun, it was the myth that grew around it. Because once America believed the .4 for Magnum was the most powerful handgun in the world, everyone wanted one, and not everyone should have had one. Number 17 is less famous, but far deadlier in its precision, the Ruger Super Blackhawk. A revolver built not for show, but for impact. This gun was engineered to handle cartridges so powerful that most pistols couldn't even survive the recoil. It was built for hunters' tracking bears, or men who didn't trust the law to save them in time. It's a simple truth. When a weapon can drop a charging animal in one shot, it becomes an equalizer between fear and control. And the Ruger Super Blackhawk became exactly that. Number 16, the Colt 1873 Single Action Army, also known as the Peacemaker. Few names in weapon history are as ironic as this one. This 6-shooter was carried by soldiers, sheriffs, and gunfighters across the American West. It appeared in every saloon, every standoff, and every dime novel of the era. It was called the gun that won the West, and it did. Its danger wasn't just its bullet. It was its symbolism. The Peacemaker became the instrument of frontier justice, where one man's peace was another man's ending. To hold a Colt Single Action Army was to hold the balance of power. And every pull of its trigger echoed through history. But danger doesn't just live in the past. At number 15, we meet the Desert Eagle .50A. Now this is excess made metal. Over 4 pounds of gleaming steel, a recoil so violent it feels like a handshake from Thor. It's the gun that looks too big to be real, and yet it is. Developed by Magnum Research in the 1980s and later manufactured by Israel Military Industries, the Desert Eagle became a Hollywood legend. But beneath the silver and gold finish lies a real monster, a semi-automatic pistol firing a .50 Action Express round that hits like a freight train. It's impractical for daily use, but that's not the point. The Desert Eagle wasn't made to hide, it was made to be seen. And in the right hands, or the wrong ones, that makes it extremely dangerous. Number 14, the Colt M1917 revolver, a wartime workhorse, built in a hurry when America entered World War I and ran short on 1911 pistols. Colt and Smith & Wesson stepped up, converting revolvers to fire the .45 ACP cartridge using half-moon clips. What came out of that rush was something remarkable, a revolver with the punch of a 1911, the reliability of old-world craftsmanship, and a place in both wars and street history. It was the kind of gun that soldiers trusted and criminals craved. Simple, powerful, and brutally efficient. At number 13, the M1911, John Browning's masterpiece. This one deserves its own monument. Adopted in 1911, it served the U.S. military for over 70 years, and still does in some units today. It fires the .45 ACP, a round designed to stop an enemy cold. Not wound, not warn, stop. In the Philippines, when American soldiers faced Moro warriors who fought even after being shot, the M1911 became the answer, heavy, reliable, and final. Every soldier who carried one trusted it like a heartbeat. Every enemy who faced it feared it like death itself. It's the gun that defined American sidearms and set the standard for everything that came after. Number 12, the Colt Python. Ask any collector what the Rolls-Royce of revolvers is, and they'll tell you, the Python. Built in the 1950s with hand-fitted parts and surgical precision, the Python was smooth, balanced, and absurdly accurate. Police officers carried it. Criminals envied it. It was so well made that firing it felt like a symphony, and its .357 Magnum round made sure the music ended with a bang. It became a weapon of prestige and danger because perfection doesn't forgive mistakes. Number 11, the Smith & Wesson Model 500. This one's just pure chaos. The largest production revolver in the world, designed to fire the 500S and W Magnum round, a cartridge so powerful it can shatter bones and drop a bear in one hit. The Model 500 isn't a pistol, it's a statement. Every pull of that trigger sends a shockwave through your hand and your ego. It's dangerous not only for its power, but because it tempts people who underestimate it. You don't control the Model 500, you survive it. At number 10, we step into the modern battlefield, the Beretta M9, adopted by the U.S. military in 1985. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's an Italian gun, right? Yes, but the M9 became an American icon through its decades of service in Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. It replaced the M1911 as the official sidearm of the U.S. Armed Forces and became a symbol of the new American soldier, fast, adaptable, and globally connected. The M9 isn't the most powerful handgun, but its danger lies in reliability. It fires when it has to, no matter where it is. Sandstorms, snow, blood, rain. It doesn't care. And when a soldier's life depends on one pull of the trigger, that kind of consistency becomes lethal. Number 9 takes us into the shadows, the world of spies, silencers, and secrets. Meet the high-standard HDM 22 pistol, the weapon used by the OSS, America's wartime intelligence agency during World War II, the ancestor of the CIA. It looks small, almost unassuming, but this pistol was whisper quiet. Fitted with an integral suppressor, it could drop a guard in the dark and vanish before anyone knew what happened. Presidents have authorized its use. Agents have carried it in their coats through the Cold War. It was never meant to make headlines. It was meant to erase them. The HDM reminds us that danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Number 8, the Cult Detective Special. A snub-nosed revolver made famous by the hard-boiled detectives of the 1930s and 40s. This gun was built for one job: to end a conversation quickly. Short barrel, fast draw, 6 rounds of .38 special that could stop a man at close range. It fit perfectly in a coat pocket, which made it the favorite of detectives and gangsters. When a man reached for his coat back then, everyone held their breath, because if he had a detective special, the next sound you'd hear was thunder. It was the weapon of the streets, the alleys, and the stories that never made the papers. At number 7, one of the most feared handguns in the hands of the American military elite, the Mark 23 SOCOM pistol by Heckler & Koch. Built for U.S. Navy SEALs in the 1990s, the Mark 23 is not a regular pistol. It's a combat system. Massive, silent, precise, capable of surviving salt water, mud, and the worst conditions on Earth, chambered in 45 ACP. It was designed for special operations where failure wasn't an option. With a suppressor and laser aiming module, it could take down enemies silently from the dark. The Mark 23 wasn't just a gun, it was a statement of intent. You won't hear us coming, but you'll know we were here. Number 6 brings us back to a weapon that blurred the line between pistol and cannon, the Auto Mag .44 amp, born in the 1970s. This stainless steel monster was designed to fire a .44 caliber round at velocities rivaling a rifle. It was loud, flashy, and terrifying, and it became a Hollywood icon thanks to sudden impact. But here's the thing, the Auto Mag wasn't just dangerous because of its power. It was dangerous because it was unpredictable. Its recoil, its mechanics, even the ammo, were wild. It demanded respect, and anyone who didn't give it that usually regretted it. Collectors today see it as a masterpiece. Shooters see it as a challenge. Everyone else as a beautiful stainless steel mistake that could punch through almost anything. Now we're in the top 5, and this is where history meets legend. Number 5, the Colt Walker Revolver 1847. This was the hand cannon of its day. 6 chambers, each holding a .44 caliber ball and up to 60 grains of powder, nearly double the load of later revolvers. Samuel Walker, a Texas Ranger, helped design it with Samuel Colt. He wanted a revolver powerful enough to stop a horse, literally, and it could. The recoil was so heavy that soldiers sometimes broke wrists firing it. But when you were facing a charging enemy, or worse, the Colt Walker didn't ask questions. It just decided the outcome. Fewer made, even fewer survived. But every single one became a legend. Number 4 is a modern monster, the Glock 20, chambered in 10mm auto. This is the gun that law enforcement and hunters both respect and fear. Because the 10mm round is no joke. It delivers massive stopping power, more than most police pistols, and is capable of taking down large game animals. In the 1980s, the FBI adopted the 10mm after the infamous 1986 Miami shootout, where agents were outgunned. But most couldn't handle its recoil, it was too powerful. The Glock 20 was one of the few pistols that could manage it. For those who could control it, it was perfect. For those who couldn't, it was chaos. It is still one of the most dangerous handguns ever made because it gives ordinary people access to extraordinary power. Number 3, a weapon so controversial that it changed American law, the Tech 9. On paper, it's just a semi-automatic pistol. But in practice, it became the face of urban violence in the late 1980s and 90s. Compact, Fast-firing, capable of being modified to fire full auto, it became the weapon of choice for criminals and gang wars. It was cheap, intimidating, and deadly at close range. The Tech-9 didn't just make headlines. It reshaped policy, sparked debates about gun control, and became a symbol of the darker side of American firepower. At number 2, the Colt M1911A1 Custom Tactical. Yes, we already talked about the standard M1911, but this is the evolution of a legend. Custom built for elite military units, these pistols feature precision machining, match-grade barrels, and hand-tuned triggers. They're reliable under pressure, accurate beyond belief, and still chambered in the classic 45 ACP. It's not flashy, but it doesn't have to be. It's the quiet kind of dangerous, the kind that wins wars, not headlines. And now, the number 1 most dangerous American handgun ever made. Not because it's the biggest, not because it's the newest, but because it changed everything. The Colt .45 Peacemaker. Yes, we've seen it before on this list, but this is the full circle moment. The Peacemaker wasn't just a gun, it was the gun. It tamed the frontier, armed the cavalry, inspired Hollywood, and became the universal image of American power. Every cowboy, soldier, and outlaw carried its legend, even if they never held the gun itself. It was the first weapon that turned a person into a symbol. It created the myth of the American West, the gunslinger, the lone hero. The Colt .45 didn't just kill, it created culture. And in that sense, it's the most dangerous handgun of all. But here's the real truth. Danger doesn't live in the steel or the gunpowder or the trigger. It lives in the hand that holds it and the mind that decides when to use it. From the Colt Patterson to the Glock 20, from the Peacemaker to the Desert Eagle, every one of these weapons reflects the same thing: a nation's desire to build, to protect, to dominate, and sometimes to destroy. These are not just tools, they're mirrors, showing us what we're capable of. For better or worse, you've seen the guns. You've heard the names, but behind every one of these weapons, there's a story. A man, a moment, a decision that changed everything. Because a gun, on its own, is silent. It's the hands that hold it that write history. Let's start with one of the wildest stories ever told about the American West. 1876, Lincoln County, New Mexico. A man named William H. Bonney, better known as Billy the Kid, walks into a saloon with a Colt Peacemaker on his hip. Legend says he could draw and fire 2 shots before most men could blink. When the shooting stopped, the kid didn't just leave with his life, he left with a legend. It was stories like these that made the Peacemaker more than a gun. It became a symbol of speed, courage, and chaos, all rolled into one. And while most of us will never walk into a duel at high noon, the myth lives on every time someone picks up a revolver and imagines what it was like to stand in the dust, staring down fate. Now let's fast forward to the 20th century, to a different kind of war. Vietnam, 1968. A U.S. Marine named SGT, John Jack Wilson, carries a Colt M1911A1. He's been through the jungle, through fire, through hell. One day, his rifle jams in a close quarters fight. The M1911 comes out, and in less than 5 seconds, it saves his life. When asked later what he thought of it, he said, "It felt like the gun was alive, like it knew what to do before I did." That's not poetry. That's the reality of men who trusted these tools with everything they had. The M1911 wasn't designed to be fancy. It was designed to work when nothing else would. And that's why even today, over 100 years later, it is still used by soldiers, cops, and shooters who know that when you pull that trigger, it means something. And then there's the dark side, the guns that became infamous not because of who they saved, but who they destroyed. The Tech-9, a weapon of chaos. Used in crimes that shocked the nation. A gun that became a headline, a debate, a symbol of everything that could go wrong when power fell into the wrong hands. But here's the hard truth. The Tech-9 didn't create violence. It revealed it. It showed us that design and intent are two very different things. One is born in the factory, the other in the mind. That's the double edge of American firepower, innovation and danger, side by side. Now, let's go even deeper to the guns you'll never see in museums or on display in movies. Like the high-standard HDM, the silenced .22 pistol carried by American spies. In the shadows of World War II, it changed the rules of the game. One quiet shot could alter the course of an entire mission. It wasn't about power, it was about precision, patience, and silence. These weapons lived in the dark, and sometimes the most dangerous tools aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones that never get caught, but danger isn't always found in war or crime. Sometimes it's found in obsession. Gun collectors, the historians of steel, will tell you that every American handgun tells a story about who we were at the time. In the 1800s, it was about survival. In the 1900s, about identity. And today, it's about freedom, control, and heritage. A man can spend his whole life chasing the perfect revolver, the rarest 1911, or the smoothest trigger pull. Because in that chase, he's not just collecting metal, he's holding a piece of history. Something that meant something to someone, somewhere, in a moment that shaped the world. That's why American handguns aren't just weapons, they're artifacts of power. Let's talk about power for a second, because that's the real theme here, isn't it? Every gun we've talked about, from the Colt Walker to the Glock 20, represents a different version of what America thinks power is. For some, power means protection. For others, it means dominance. For a few, it means freedom. That's what makes these weapons so fascinating and so dangerous. They don't just fire bullets, they fire ideas. The Peacemaker fired the idea of the cowboy, the lone man who stands for justice. The M1911 fired the idea of the soldier, disciplined, fearless, unstoppable. And the Glock 20, it fires the idea of the modern American, efficient, adaptable, and always ready. These guns don't just shape wars, they shape culture. Movies, music, art, all built around the image of the gun as both savior and sinner. And yet, as much as we glorify them, we also fear them. Because deep down, we know the truth. The most dangerous part of a handgun isn't the bullet. It's the decision. A gun in the wrong hands can destroy a life. But in the right hands, it can save one. That's the paradox that has haunted America since the first trigger was pulled. So, what does all of this mean? It means that when you talk about the 20 most dangerous American handguns ever made, you're not just talking about hardware, you're talking about the history of America itself. Every design, every round, every scar left behind tells the story of a nation obsessed with strength, survival, and self-reliance. These guns are chapters in a story still being written, a story about fear, power, and the price of freedom. And maybe that's what makes them so dangerous after all. Now, I've got a question for you. Which one of these handguns do you think deserves the #1 spot? The Peacemaker, the 1911? Or maybe something newer, something that hasn't made the headlines yet, but will? Drop your answer in the comments, because the debate never ends. If you made it this far, you're not just watching, you're one of us. So hit that subscribe button, because this journey through America's deadliest firepower has only just begun. Drop a comment. Tell me which gun blew your mind the most. And if you know someone who thinks they've seen it all, share this video and prove them wrong. Because next time, we're opening the vault on weapons the world was never meant to see.